All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's conversation, Love Shouldn't Hurt, Teen Dating Violence and Mental Health. I am Margie McLean, your host for today, and this webinar is designed to empower teens, families, educators with information, support, strategies to recognize and respond to teen dating violence and understanding its impact on mental health. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded and it is live. Feel free to post questions in the chat. We will have a Q&A towards the end. If you or someone you know needs help, we'll be sharing confidential resources throughout the session. Now, let's meet our amazing panelists. Each panelist, I would love for you to tell us your name, your work, and why this topic is important to you. So we are going to first start with Miss Inman. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and why is this topic important to you?
Hi, I'm Nikelle Inman. I'm a realtor with Pilot Realty of Keller Williams of Fayetteville. This is really important to me because our youth, they're very important. It's really important to kind of get an understanding as we are young. So as we're brought up, we know what things look like if they're healthy or if they're not healthy. And so I'm very passionate about that. Because if we don't get that in check, then we begin to have a life where we're trying to unpack all of this stuff, and so we want to have awareness beforehand.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to Miss E or Miss Earlene Beal.
Hello, my name is Earlene Williams Beal, and I am a special education teacher of 17 years. I have an organization called, a business styled by Mrs. E.com, and I also have special education the right way at gmail.com, in which I share different practices to help empower people with disabilities or educators or family members to understand more about students' disability. The reason that this I am passionate about this topic is because I am a survivor of domestic violence, and it means a lot to me to share the message so that other people or youth don't end up in the same situation, because it does tear you down when you've been in that type of relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we'll go to Teisha.
Hi, I'm Teisha McIver. I am currently working in a charter school district with teens and elementary school students, as well as past history of life coaching and coaching about your nutritional health. So I'm passionate about it because I understand that your gut health is connected to your mental health. And most of the times when we start having challenges with being abused, we start to overeat. So if we can learn at a young age how to process and prevent certain things, then it can help us as we, become young adults so that we don't continue generational curses. So my whole thing has been just to get educated or help young teens that are being forgotten about at a young age so that they don't have to suffer as adults.
Thank you. All right. Miss Courtney Banks, Mclaughlin.
Good afternoon, and thank you all, everyone, for joining in. My name is Courtney Banks Mclaughlin. I'm serving my third term on Fayetteville City Council. I also have a business called Route 87 LLC, which we put a lot of events on throughout the city, event planning. I think that this is a very important topic to discuss. As mentioned, like Ms. Earlene mentioned, I too have experience abuse, and I think that it is very important because this is something, unfortunately, that still continues to take place in our community is on a rise. So again, thank you for allowing me to be here.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Takia Mathis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Takia Mathis. I'm a model, community advocate, health advocate, and I also represent a lot of the domestic violence community. This topic is very important to me because I'm a survivor. My mother is a survivor, and I am a creative visionary in the community as well. And I think it's important to tell your story. So I find a lot of creative ways for people to tell express their traumas through creativity. I am the author of the book Trauma to Triumph, which is about my story about how it felt to be a child of a domestic violence, victim, and how we were raised through it, and how I almost repeated the cycle, and how I broke free from it. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, and last but not least, Miss Kimberly Carver.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Kimberly Carver. I am the CEO and founder of my own organization called the Purple Trail Foundation for Domestic Violence Awareness here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I am also a survivor of domestic violence of 17 years plus. The reason why I created this foundation for women of all ages, but not just women and men, because I like to tell people, and I like for people to know and understand that domestic violence doesn't have any identity. It doesn't pick or choose who it hits, the homes that it hits. Even if you're not a victim, it still hits your family members, your children, your coworkers, your church members, whoever that you have in your environment or your circle. Is very necessary to understand not only the significance of the different types of domestic violence, but the barrier that it puts on your family members and surrounding counterparts in your life. We want to build up each other. We want to rebuild ourselves from the
Like she's frozen. But we'll come back to Miss Kimberly Carver, like she froze. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm looking for this to be a very informational topic. Of course, the first part we started with was just talking about teen dating violence. We had a panel discussion with our teens, and then we had these ladies come on and speak with us as well. So before we get started, I always love to show kind of like a background and talk a little bit about that talks a little bit about our topic. And so with that being said, we're going to watch a small little snippet about domestic violence and what it is. And then we'll have our questions afterwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
Teen dating violence is essentially domestic violence among teens. And this month is dedicated to sharing information with parents and teachers, as many people think it may not affect preteens or teens. Now, here's how one organization is working to break the cycle. On this day, we wear orange.
It's bright, it's vibrant.
To encourage parents, educators, and teens to know the facts about teen dating violence.
We're seeing it as early as the 6th grade when they are exploring what relationships look like, feel like. But we find a lot of times that they're modeling unhealthy relationships that they're either seeing in their home or on social media or on reality TV.
And since dating is not allowed for most teens, warning signs like possessiveness or isolation may go under the radar because the child is afraid to tell their parents.
What's most concerning for me, especially as a mom, is not knowing, right? They're hiding it and talking amongst each other.
Sanu Dang, the executive director of Transitions Family Violence Services in Hampton, says social media can also play a role in the abuse.
So then there's the social shaming that happens in school, and then the bullying.
Ding and other anti-violence agencies held a press conference last week to call on lawmakers to address funding concerns.
If we're not able to take care of the services that are necessary, we're failing the next generation of children who are already crying out for help.
All month, they will share information, including teens, and an adult may request a protective order.
If we're going to end domestic violence, it's important that we don't forget this piece, this prevention piece, getting to young people before they experience harm in a relationship.
And later this month, on Monday, February 26, teens from 14 to 18 are welcome to join a teen dating awareness workshop. That's from 4:30 until 6 o'clock, but you do have to RSVP. If you'd like to learn more, just look for this story under the Domestic Violence Awareness page over on wavy.com.
All right. So I thought that was very important just to kind of show a little bit about domestic violence, let parents know that it is happening, but not just with adults, but it's also happening with our youth. And just being an educator and seeing some of that, trying to talk to young ladies or either young men, because we want to make sure that we dispel the myth that is just young ladies or women that's going through domestic violence, but we also have young men that are going through that as well. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get into our discussion. Again, we're just asking everyone to limit so we make sure that we have enough time for everyone to be able to talk. So kind of limit, if you can, your answer to maybe like 1 or 2 minutes so we'll be able to hear everyone. So let's get started. What are some common signs of teen dating violence that parents, educators, and teens should be aware of? And I'll start with you, Miss Iman.
I would say some signs could be isolation, just withdrawing and just not communicating. I know that a lot of younger people feel like they cannot talk to someone because they may not understand. And so when it becomes a moment of secrecy or just shutting down, that could be a sign of domestic violence.
All right. Councilwoman McLaughlin, Banks McLaughlin.
Thank you. I agree. I think isolation may definitely play a role. You can see the individual that maybe experienced domestic abuse decline in their grades or some of the activities that they are known to participate in. Also, with being in a relationship, I think you will probably see some signs as far as the person that they're dating, being very controlling. And for that individual, always make an excuse for their partner.
Thank you. I want to hear from Ms. Mathis.
So I think that, again, once they stated like isolation, mood swings, sometimes being overly protective with the people that actually care about them, like their response to them may be way more defensive. Again, just noticing like how they are about their activities, especially if you're around them all the time, they may be more withdrawn, again, from the people they're closer to and more attached to the person they're, dating or like. And again, just not being their usual selves, or you can kind of feel the persona that they're trying to put on isn't themselves anymore.
So, Miss Beal, or Miss E, as I call you, is teen dating violence different from adult domestic violence?
You said, is it different from adult domestic violence?
How is it different, or is it different?
I feel like there are some differences because we are adults, so we're able to make our decisions. Sometimes with children or teenagers, they don't know themselves yet. They may know like right from wrong to a certain extent, but they haven't experienced life. As adults, we've experienced some things, so we are a little more aware of what abuse may be or may not be. So I do think there are a lot of differences and a lot of similarities.
How do you think it's different, or is there a difference between teen dating violence and adult domestic violence?
Is it still my question?
It's Kimberly.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't able to hear you. I'm looking at the screen. Could you repeat that for me one more time? I'm sorry.
What's the difference between teen dating violence and adult domestic violence? Is there really a difference?
So honestly, domestic violence period is domestic violence. It is seen in the same manner. You experience the same the same hurt, the same pain. The only difference is, and I'm speaking only from my perspective at this point, when I was a teenager experiencing domestic violence, because mine started at 17, I was very much in denial immediately, because I was one of those children or teenagers back then that was taught, the signs, right? In health class. That's where I first would, was paying attention to those type of things. And I immediately said, oh no, this can't be that. I would never. How did I end up in this? As versus an adult, we've already gone through life. And, at that point, some of us even have children. So we know what feels good and what doesn't, what's right, what's wrong. But even in adult stage, sometimes we place ourselves in immediate, I don't want to say delusion, but we try to pretend like it's not happening, like it's not what it really is, which are essentially what we call ignoring the red signs, red flags. I will say this, as a teenager that is experiencing domestic violence, we're more passive. Mm-hmm. As an adult experiencing domestic violence, there are things that we pass.
Oh, she done froze again. All right, I'm gonna let her come back, and I'm gonna go to Teisha. Teisha, when we think about domestic violence, and teen dating violence, with that being said, one of the things she said was, sometimes our adults can be delusional. I believe sometimes our students can be, our kids can be the same way. A lot of times our adults are products of being in domestic violence or teen dating violence, which now they just grew up in the ages that's different, or they have been in where family they've been around that, so they think it's normal. So is there really a difference between teen date violence and adult date violence, or is it just the age?
I think it's the age, but I think it's also I am an advocate of the word a child's place. A child's place has allowed abuse and allowed abuse to be overlooked or not seen in a lot of cases. And so I think the biggest difference is if a teenager has been placed in a child's place and not explained how to communicate out of a child's place, then that's going to be a significant difference, because even some of us as adults, that's why it's still an issue, because we were put in a child's place. So when you start looking at abusive situations, in our community starts because we were put in that place and never brought out. So you have to understand, abusers groom a lot of times as well, that child, and they prey on that child's place, because they know that you're not able to authentically communicate out of that place. Okay. And I wanted to talk about the obsessive behavior that happens as well. That's a sign. So you have to watch kids, because in that mindset, love is safety. So, there's components of love. So when you're looking, what does this say? Looking for love in all the wrong places. So sometimes people feel attention is love, but you have to be careful that it's not obsession. Okay.
Yes.
So a lot of times what I've seen it with teenage love is kind of obsessive sometimes. So that can always be a sign. And I think someone mentioned also the outburst of anger when confronted about that person. Those are signs as well, even in adults and children. So the signs are there. I just think that we need to be careful about placing children in a child's place. So there is a way to communicate with your child about being too grown. And I hate the saying when you see little girls and they're more mature, oh, she just fast. All that stuff makes the child defensive and not able to communicate on the level that we are as an adult, when we can express our authentic sexuality or whatever. So that's the next thing that becomes an issue, the sexuality, whether it be heterosexual or if you are identifying as, you know, because it's not just women being abused by men, it's women abusing women, it's men, it's a lot now. These teenagers are faced with a lot, so you've got to cover all spectrums. So I do think, although it's a thin line of the difference, there is a difference because you're talking about someone who is an adolescent becoming into their adulthood or finding their voice, and that's normally when they're preyed upon, when they're trying to find their voice. That's why I say it's normally a generational curse thing that has to be broken, because when you dig deep, normally that child, it was their parent that was abused. It's a generational curse. So we've got to start having the conversations and stop placing our children in a child's place.
You know, it's very important you said that. Before we move on, I want to thank Miss Earlene for being on. She do have some comments. She said sometimes a person think that it's a form of love. She also said signs could be also wearing baggy clothes to cover up themselves, could be another sign. She said only the age is different. There's no difference between domestic violence, just the age is different. And she also said you can see them being withdrawn. Like to thank my best friend out of Tennessee, Nashville, Mclaughlin, and Anthony McDonald Jr. for being on as well. One of the things I've learned, well, I would say I learned because I have worked with alternative in an alternative setting majority of my educational career. And so working now in the juvenile detention center here in Cumberland County, I'm learning a little bit more about our students because our students have some trauma. And some of this could be their trauma as well, because we talk about domestic violence and let's think about it, you know, we have abusiveness from the parents or things that they see in you know, in their community. And so our kids, of course, they have a way that they communicate, which is not always what we think they should communicate, you know, the profanity and things like that. You know, and I look at some of these kids like I'm old enough to be your grandmother, but I say not your grandma, but maybe your mama. I'm trying not to go grandma yet. So with that being said, you know, I had a student today and he had made a little comment and said a profanity. So I looked at him and I called his name and I said, we do not speak like that. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I said, I'm doing gentle parenting. And you see it sometimes, you know. So he was like, yeah, you're right. So I said, I'm trying to learn gentle parent. So with that being said, our kids learn the way we speak to them that can now become abusive, and they are used to that. And that's how they seek attention, because we have some students that seek that type of attention. It's like, why do you seek that negative attention? Because that is what get them attention, and it do become abusive. So real quick, the last question under that teen dating violence, I want to talk about explain different forms of teen dating violence beyond just abuse, because a lot of times we just think it's just abuse, physical abuse, but what's some other forms of teen dating violence? I'm gonna go with uh Takia. Can you tell us just a couple of forms that you know or have experienced?
Yes, so definitely the control with cell phone or comments and things about what you have on. Maybe like feeling or saying humiliating comments, you know, if someone else is approaching you, like a friend or even another guy friend, and it could be literally just a friend, and they're like, oh, who is that? Or whatever the case is. And this can go both ways with females as well, because when, you know, young men are raised by good women or good families, sometimes they can be naive to what an obsessive woman is about and what it looks like. I'm sorry, y'all. My husband is Mr. Clean right now, if you hear the vacuum. But just things like that, I think that control just verbally, like, or they're making you feel small with verbal comments. I think that's very important to realize or recognize.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Carver, what are some signs beyond physical abuse that can be teen dating violence?
Me, Ms. Margie?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. My internet is horrible over here, y'all. Forgive me. Okay, so as far as teen dating violence versus adult domestic violence, um, I've literally experienced every area. It started out with the mental, emotional, and verbal. We know that at times mental, emotional abuse can be just about as 3 times as bad as physical, because physical, you see the scars. Mental, emotional, it's hard to prove the scars. And it takes time and time and time. And truthfully, if we're being honest, even in my journey now, after all of those years, I'm still quite healing. And I'm never not honest about that. I tell the truth every time I speak in a room, that God gives me opportunity, that I am not perfect. I'm not completely healed, because it could be a movie, the way a person in the public responded to me, or anything, a song on the radio that will take me back to my journey of domestic violence. And I will have to do some deep cleansing to myself to reobtain myself, recenter myself. It's always a journey, which is what helped me title my organization, which is the Purple Trail Foundation. Every woman, every man, every young woman, and every young man, as teenagers even, they have their own journey, their own trail. But I always teach, when I'm advocating or mentoring within this arena, that you never walk alone in your journey. No matter if it's mental, emotional, verbal, sexual, financial, social, there's so many different aspects, literally, of domestic violence that you can learn from, experience, know how to navigate through your healing process with it. You just have to know that you're never alone, even in silence, as most of us have experienced in our journey. We still have our family members, we have our coworkers, our church members, our mentors, mentees, everyone that's connected to us individually, walk with us in that journey, whether we believe it or not, because people notice the difference. I know that some of us ladies has spoken earlier and said that a lot of young women and young men, they shut down. They become isolated. That's the number one sign. Sometimes we become over aggressive all of a sudden, which is out of the norm. If we're not an aggressive person, very defensive, because we feel like we have to defend, because we went for so long behind closed doors not defending, or not being able to. Our freedom, our independence was taken from us. But again, it's all a learning process. And I would say my major trial with domestic violence was mental, emotional, and verbal. But I have experienced every arena of domestic violence.
What religion or race or financial stability you in, or that teen dating violence can happen? Can it happen in a church? Can it happen in a mosque? Can it happen in, well, I mean, a little bit about it, because sometimes I feel like we hold that back. And I know I bring the church up because I am deep in the church, pastor's kid and all that, PK. But we don't talk about that enough in the church, that this stuff is actually happening. I feel like that should be a discussion that is happening in our churches or in our mosques or wherever you decide to worship. We need to start talking more about that. What you think, Councilwoman? Should we even touch it?
Think so. I think for me, church is that safe place. You should be able to talk about any and everything, because that's considered a safe place. But just as we talked about the different abuse, especially with our young folks, them being young and vulnerable. And some of those abuse can start off with, it start off simple. It can start off with just a typical insult, constant criticism, yelling, name calling. And I think a lot of times people think, at least for me, growing up, when I used to see or hear individuals that were in domestic violence situation, I'm like, how could you even put yourself in that situation? Who would allow someone to put their hands on them? But I realized from me having experiencing that it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens, that person kind of will you in, and next thing you know, you madly in love, and now you're trying to find a way to get out of that toxic relationship. And when you are in those relationships, it is kind of hard to speak out because we see what's going on right now with, with P. Diddy and Cassie. You have people blaming her for that situation. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't know, neither one of them personally, but it makes it hard for people to speak up when they experience that, because again, it's like you're having to prove that it happened, and you end up feeling guilty for allowing that situation to happen. So I think just in general, as a community, we have to do better with like we're doing now, having that conversation and providing awareness and resources for our youth, and allowing them to know that there are individuals that you can come and talk to, because unfortunately, many of us experience abuse one way or another. So I definitely think that it needs to be a conversation that's taking place in the church and in the school, but definitely at home. And unfortunately, sometimes it starts within home.
Right. All right.
Can I share, Ms. Margie, on
Go
that
ahead.
topic?
Yes.
So when you talk about church and domestic violence, I have a new book coming out, and it is called "It Did Not Kill Me," and it's memoirs of a strong woman. And like I said, I grew up in the Holiness Church. My father was the deacon. My father got up and spoke in church, and then when we got home, beat my mom and beat us. So I learned as a child that domestic violence was okay, that you pretend like you go to church on Sunday and you live a life in front of people like everything is fine, but behind closed door, you're someone else. Now, I love my father with all my heart, and I feel like maybe his childhood affected his adulthood. And like she said, you have to break those cycles. So it was a cycle that had to be broken. But I understand it's really, really familiar to me to go to church, like church all the time, church. But yet at home, it was not living the church. Now, do I blame God? I don't. Have I blamed God in the past? I have. So a lot of times, you're in church and you're going through these things. So I definitely believe that you have to have those conversations. And then into adulthood, married and went through the same thing all over again. So I just wanted to share, when you said about the church, it is happening in churches every day. Yes. We are reading God's word and not living God's word. So I grew up that way. I grew up with going to church on Sunday, Bible study at home. Every scripture was pertaining to how me and my mom should live. It never pertained to how he should live or how he should treat us. Like, I actually thought that I would die before I was 18 because I was the scripture about respecting your parents, and everything was disrespect. So there definitely is a true issue of the church and domestic violence. Did I express that in a way that you understand what I was saying, Ms. Margie? Did everybody understand?
Yes. And that's the reason why I love having the webinars that I have, because I love to bring people. We are not just professionally talking about it, like you actually been through it and you can tell your story and people can see that. A lot of times we have professionals that come on and they know it from the book side, but then I love to have people who actually been through it and can tell their story. And these are people that, the community knows, and they looking like, what, she been through that? Okay, if she can tell her story, then I can tell my story too. So that's what I love to hear. Nikelle?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you all with addressing this, especially when it comes down to the church. I grew up in the church, and one of the things that I struggled with when I experienced verbal abuse was wanting to have a meek spirit like Christ, but understanding not allowing someone to walk all over me. Growing up in a church, I went by the Bible scriptures and everything, being brought up by my parents. And one of the things that I didn't notice was by thinking I was being meek, I was becoming defensive with my loved ones, right? My mom was talking to me. I remember going out to eat with my mom, and she was really concerned about a guy I was dating. And I guess I didn't realize the abuse during that time. It was just like, okay, well, let me defend myself, right? He's yelling at me, going off on me, saying mean things. And at first it was just like, okay, well, be the example, right? Be the example that he can see, right? Because he may be the only Jesus you can see, but realizing that his heart wasn't in the right place to receive that. And so a lot of the times I gave myself a hard time because it was like, okay, this is what you should be, but forgetting that he shouldn't treat me that way. And so I think it's really important, even if you are seeing good examples, that you are not in a way twisting things to make things okay, right? It's okay to be the change for people, but also you don't allow that abuse to change you, because I know it was making me defensive. It was making me in a way mean when it came down to finally wanting to defend myself, and I knew that wasn't who I was supposed to be. And so I think it's really important. There's a lot of topics that we kind of don't address in the church, and so as we get older and we're in relationships, it's like, okay, we don't know how to navigate them because we're not having these conversations.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, one thing I always say, and I know it's a joke, I said, well, Lord, if you can flip tables and beat people, then I guess I can flip tables too. Can I flip tables also? You know, I always call myself a Peter. And that's who I am, is a Peter. But I'm like, if he flip table too, I can flip the table too also. So, you know, we just have to make sure that we able to defend ourselves and know how to defend ourselves as well without us becoming abusive ourselves, right? Because I have had someone, when I was president of the Alamance Gifford section of NCNW, we had an open forum. I had a young lady come, and I had a young man to actually come. One of my Masonic brothers came, and he gave his spiel of how he was in an abusive relationship, and from him being in a abusive relationship, he actually became abusive because he wanted to defend himself, and then it just kind of got out of hand. So he left one abusive relationship, got into another relationship, and now he became the abusive one because of what he dealt with. So we have to, again, I feel like, yes, we do need to talk about that in all aspects of our life. Councilwoman, you had a question, you said?
Yes, I had a question for Earlene. I know you mentioned your father was abusive, and you know you guys attended church and he was a pastor, what have you. So what would you tell the youth? Because you know we always talk about, you know, when you're going through something, tell someone, a family member, and I think the average person would probably go and talk to their mother or their father. So what would you tell someone who's experienced abuse? Because then, like you mentioned, your father, you loved your father, you knew what he did wasn't right, but what do you say in a situation like that?
Well, he wasn't a pastor. He was a deacon in the church. And
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's okay, and very well spoken. Um, First of all, you know, I feel like we're taught, most of us, our culture is taught, your business is your business. Don't tell nobody your business. And then even sometimes in church, we're taught, well, you shouldn't tell people your business. You're supposed to work it out with your husband. You're supposed to, you know, so that is embedded in us to not, it's basically keeping secrets, but that's what they're teaching us. This is the way we're supposed to live. So what I would say to a young person going through this, you don't want to get your parents in trouble, but talk to your counselor. Talk to your counselor. I wrote a children's book, and it's Daddy, Do You Really Love Us? And in that book, it's talking about children going through domestic violence. And the child told a friend, and the friend told the counselor, and then the counselor intervened, and the father got help. That's not what happens all the time. Sometimes children die in these situations. Sometimes parents die in this situation. And that's not to scare anybody, but just to understand that even though you're a child, you have a right to feel safe. You have a right to feel safe. So find a safe person and talk to a safe person. You know, I had counselors in school that I loved, but it was embedded in us. You don't tell our business. This is our business, you know. And there was a time that my sister did share with the counselor something that had happened in our home. And by the time my dad got through with it, you know, when you take my child, you raised it, if you know, and they never came back again. So in the book, there's also a chapter called Scars, as they were talking about. We have those scars. Thank God I'm not that person, that wounded child anymore, but it does leave scars. So if you're a child that's in that position, I would say find someone at school that's safe to talk to.
Also, sometimes what happens that I've seen working in public schools is the child will say something to a teacher. We then tell the counselor then calls the parent, and the parent take the child home, and then the child won't talk no more. So it's like it just makes any sense. If you're trying to protect the child, why would you call the parent and say, this is what she said, we got to write this up? What do you think the parent's going to do when that child go home? Now the child don't have no one, or feel like they have no one that they can talk to, and then they are being abused or going through whatever they're going through in silence. That's one of the things I see in the school system that I just feel like need to be revamped myself. All right, Teisha, you have a comment or a question?
I did. I just wanted to say, in the video that we watched that segued us into the conversation, it was mentioned about reality TV. And I think that for us to have change, we have to be a part of the change. Okay. So one of the things is, truth is protection. So what I noticed when you talk about from a religious perspective, it's not always an honest environment, because you're chastised and beat up with the word instead of being edified and gratification through the word. It's almost like you're chastised through it. So I think one of the ways that we can change up front too is to teach the youth or the young people to have a relationship with God and not be in love with religion. Because if you know the difference between the two, then you're able to separate and have that covenant with God up front. So I think a lot of what happens is our children are being manipulated through TV. I mean, you got to think, this stuff for these kids, it's not like they don't have a delayed reaction the way we did to things. Everything is happening to them in real time.
Yeah.
So I think, I'll say my age group, I'm heading into almost 50. This age group has got to wake up and understand that it's never going to be what it was in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s. We could do a whole song with that. This is their reality. And their reality is, if we're not going to walk in truth at all times, then we can't protect them in the darkness, because the only time that the light can shine is in truth. So when you're seeing, these kids out here twerking, we're encouraging these behaviors. We're encouraging behaviors that when we were younger, we were told, you don't, toot your butt up in front of no man. You don't sit on no man's lap. You don't take gifts from a man. It's like everything that was put in place to protect us in a church environment, a school environment, is being undone. And those things were there to protect our children, and we need to tell the truth about why those things were there. And that's going to be a part of the prevention conversation. Until we are willing to say that we've fallen off, we can't get back on.
Right.
Okay. And accept responsibility, and stop being adult bullies too. Stop bullying these children, into our pigeonhole of what we think they should be. We need to meet them where they're at. Like I said, they're living, this stuff is happening to them every day. They are flooded from the time they wake up. They are flooded with information. So we need to be the change that we want to see in the youth, and we need to protect them the way that we were protected. But we have more of an advantage because we have platforms like this that we can hop on and share things. We can go into the schools and share. We need to be way more active with how we're approaching our teens. And then in order to be dateable, we have to be relatable, right? So are most of us approachable when we get to certain levels in our life? That's what I would say. So I think the biggest thing with the church is teach these kids to be in love with God and not religion, and teach them that I don't care if he sits in the pulpit or where he sits, he'll never sit above God. And so you have to be truthful in your convictions and how you explain these things to children. But I agree with Miss E. I've seen it where the preachers are so nice at church and the deacons are so nice at church and they come home and they are pure hell. I've seen it where the wives and the children are living a nightmare. And it does need to be talked about more. And these kids are taught to be compulsive liars at a young age and cover up for daddies or mamas sometimes indiscretions and verbal abuse.
Also, in the families, when I was growing up, there was a hierarchy. You got your grandparents and your great uncles and stuff, and then you come down. And I remember, you go in the house, you always go to the older person and you speak to them and come on down. That was just the hierarchy that we have. And sometimes, when we talk about parent abuse and dating abuse and all that, you have to go a little bit further to uncle and grandparents and all that stuff who are doing some things to our kids. But I will also say, we talk about the kids not having anyone to talk to in the schools. I remember, and Taki, I'm coming to you next because I know your hand was up. I remember a time where when we got out of class, we could go to a teacher's door was open. They were sitting in their classroom and we actually can go in and sit with them. They write their little pass and send us a class. But now we are so packed with testing and meetings and duty, and these kids have no one that they can really talk to. I remember sitting in a classroom and a kid was talking to me, and I was supposed to be at this meeting or something or a duty or what so have you. And the kid was talking to me about them possibly. I heard them make the comment, "I'm just going to unalive myself." And so I was like, "Hey, come talk to me. Let's figure out what's going on." Okay. And while I'm in there, I have an admin coming to me like, "You need to be in this meeting." I'm like, "Well, this child is saying this." And I'm trying to figure out what's going on before I take it, or what so have you. And they're like, "No, but you need to be in the meeting." I'm like, "This kid just said this to me. Like, it didn't even matter." And so I'm like, "I'll tell you what we're going to do." And what they were trying to do is get the kid back in ISS. That was more important than what this statement this kid made. Can we get this kid to a counselor or can we get this kid to a site? And it's like we are so bogged down now that we don't have time for our children inside the classroom or inside the school to even talk. I see where there's a lack of um, uh, mentoring organizations coming in. And, me, I had a mentoring program to work with kids like that. But by the end of the day, I'm so tired. I'm like, listen, I'm going home because you're so bogged down and mentally drained that we don't have that time to put into our kids. And, I'm not going to start calling out counties, but I just see a lot that's lacking now in the schools. And now, mind you, this is 21 years of this and seeing how it has changed and how our kids have no one to go to, even in the school system. Taki, you had your hand up. You had a comment?
Yeah, so one was that going back to your statement that I think there is a lack of a safe space for these kids, because I know one thing I had to learn about was the projection from having a mother who was going through abuse and how she would talk to us because of what she was going through. But it was confusing as a child, like, why won't you talk to that man like that? Why would you talk to us like that? And I know like Cumberland County is trying to do the best that they can to provide a platform, because we do have a website that kids can kind of talk to, the counselor or social worker online, to the llama and stuff like that. However, like you said, sometimes that can be unsafe for a kid too, because what if their parent finds out and now they don't have a cell phone to call anybody, talk to a friend or anything like that? How would they escape, or how would they tell somebody what they've been through? Because now you don't notice that some kids will be kept at home because they told something to a teacher or a counselor. And I hope that we do start bridging that gap for kids to have a safe space in a younger world than waiting until they're 18, 19 years old to go through more stuff and go through more trauma. And then I did have a question for Miss E, because, I know about the effects of how, of those things, having an abusive parent that is in a organizational status, and how they have to appear that they have so much respect and things. But as a child that grows up in that, and you want to continue on into religion, or you want to learn more about God and all of that stuff, how do you keep that faith? Because as a child like me, I was questioning, okay, why would God allow my parent to do this to me? Or why are we going through this? Like, if there was a God, why, why this and that? And it kind of discourages you from wanting to learn to be in such a place or learn how to pray, because nobody's really teaching you that. You just kind of trying to find your way out. So how did you keep your faith and keep yourself, afloat, and keep yourself committed to your religion?
I think that even though I was going through all of that as a child in my home, with my father being an example of what a Christian is supposed to be, I had some authentic Christians around me. I had some praying mothers in the church that back then they tarried for the Holy Ghost and all of that. So I grew up holiness. I grew up, even though my father was an example of Christianity, I think I was still exposed to some real Christians. Now, don't get me wrong to say I never was angry with God, because I was. My marriage, my first husband was a minister. He was abusive. So it was a cycle. It really was. But get the book. But anyway, I just, it was something within me, faith within me, that everything that I went through, I knew that early on I learned that God had a purpose for it. There's no way I'm going through this without it being a purpose. I often say now, my pain was not in vain. Your pain is not in vain. There's no way a just God, is going to allow me to go through this without it being a purpose. So I said that there's ministry through my pain. I went through that so that I can help somebody else know they can get through it, or I can help somebody else not go through it, So that's how I get through the things that I've been through, is my faith in him. Even though I didn't have a good example of really what true Christianity is in my household, it was something within me that I felt the Spirit of God at some point as a child that let me know God was real. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I went through the teenage stage of being angry. I went through the stage of being angry at God in my first marriage and not understanding why I keep going through this, why all this pain. But at this point in my life, I would say just that little seed of faith was planted in me early on. And that little seed of faith did not leave me. So that little seed of faith kept feeding me when I would go through things. I know God got a purpose for this, and that's how I got through it. That's how I remain a Christian today, because that little seed of faith was there. Did I answer it in a way you understood what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am. And also, like I said, if someone is discouraged, who would you recommend they talk to in the church?
It just depends on their church, their community. All churches aren't bad. All Christians aren't bad. Mm-hmm. It's just, but I'm not gonna say you can talk to every Christian. I'm not gonna say you can talk to every pastor. I'm not gonna say you can talk to everybody that says they're saved. So what I would say is the person that you feel comfortable with, the person that you feel safe with. There's something about a true Christian that you can recognize it. You know what I'm saying? That person that really shows you authentic love. So wherever you at, if you're around people that are saying they're Christians and you need somebody to talk to, reach for the person that has that authentic love. You can see God's love in people.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
We move to the mental health, emotional impact, but Nikelle has a comment.
Yeah, I just want to kind of share. I think that's a really important question that she's asking, because I know for me, there was hard times with my faith. I've experienced a lot of things. And one of the things that I prayed to God in that was that I never would give up on him and that I would fall in love with him. I love what Teisha said earlier, falling in love with God, because that made the difference in my faith. I never wanted to give up. I experienced things in the church. I've experienced things with people, even with my dad. I have a good father, but he is a yeller, and a lot of what I experience with people is kind of triggering because that's what I kind of grew up with. Like, okay, why are you yelling at me, right? And so it's really hard. But one of the things that I prayed was, God, please allow me not to give up on you, and please allow me to fall in love with you. And I just saw after his word, I got around like-minded Christians that were having these conversations, and just dialing into what was important to me, because I knew if I let go of God, it could be a potential that I would let go forever. Because as we know, God pursues us, but we have to be willing to have God come after us. God is not going to force us or make us do anything. And so I think that that is a good question, because I know people who I grew up with who were teenagers who grew up in the church and now they're not in the church anymore. It's just like, okay, what is going on with that? And a lot of times we don't have these conversations because we think, oh, well, our faith just has to be so strong that we're not going to be weak. But it's difficult, especially if you're in the church and you have people who you looked up to, and it's just like, well, wait a second, what is going on? And so, as we know, no excuses for anyone, but man will fail you, but God never will. And so that's what I would say. Pray and just dial into your word and really take God's word as law, right? Because people can tell you anything, right? But you really go after God for the standard.
Well, thank you for that. Let's move to the mental and emotional impact. What are some short-term and some long-term effects of dating violence when it comes to a teen's mental health? Kim.
As far as teen mental health for domestic violence dating, a short term effect, if that's what we're asking. What sticks out to me
Keeps freezing. Every time she get ready to give us something good, the internet keeps freezing. I'm gonna come to you, Councilwoman.
I would say short term, low self-esteem, because I think I'm an abusive relationship. That's something that individual is like they want to bring you all the way down. So I would definitely say having low self-esteem, self-doubt, being unable to communicate with family and friends about the situation that's taking place. Long term, I would probably say anxiety, lack of trust. So I think that would be, those are my opinion when it comes to short term and long term. Definitely with long term, making it hard to love again, and to also have anxiety.
I like that. All right, Teisha. You muted.
Sorry, I gotta unmute. I would say the short term is cutting your childhood short. I heard someone say the other week, we have 18 years to be a child. And then you think about it, it's what, 30, 40 years of being an adult. So, and then if you take the time, if you develop mental health issues as a child, and then you're spending probably half of your adulthood overcoming your childhood, right? Because how many of us have had to go heal that little girl within us? And I try to tell people, stuck in the mud is stuck in the mud. Mental health is mental health. It doesn't matter if your mud is covering your head or your mental health is covering your head, or if it's at your feet. Stuck is stuck, right? So I think that the long-term effects is how to get unstuck once you've gotten to that place. And I tell you, everything in life runs by the speed of a relationship. So if you've seen unhealthy behavior, and unfortunately, you guys, it's in our DNA. I mean, that's the part a lot of people don't want to talk about too. We can take history and do whatever we want to do with it, but trauma is rooted in our DNA, just not in our immediate bloodline of our parents. You have to go back. So it is a constant battle of ensuring that, because any given moment, any situation could flip you where your mental health is in danger. So if you're not teaching your teens and your children in those 18 years how to process trauma, how to process disappointment, how to separate the emotions. I tell my students all the time, emotional intelligence. EI,
Yeah.
that song, I think Nelly has underlay,
Yeah.
EI,
Yeah.
EI. So
Yeah.
they go around
Yeah.
saying EI, EI all the time because emotional intelligence is very important to your mental health, right? So and this is one thing I want to mention as well, really quick. About 10 years ago, I was working at a mental health counseling service, and I had a white counterpart, and she came to me and she said, I don't mean any harm, but I need to ask you something. Why in the Black family is there an unspoken rule of what goes on in our house stays in our house? I think someone touched that earlier. We need to really go back into that, because that one statement too creates long-term effects, because then we pass that down to the next generation, to the next generation, to the next generation. And all we're doing is passing false information. We're passing it because it sounds good, but is it good for us? So I think we've got to look short term, but we've got to get more proactive in what we're doing with our teens and with our young people as well. So that would be my take. It's just looking at the long-term effects of some of the things that we've brought to our children, and then our children are taking that to the next generation. Does it make sense to keep saying those type of things? There's power in words. So I think the long-term effects is not just overlooking the words that we say to prevent. It may be short term in that moment, but we've got to look ahead of how that carries from generation to generation. And I keep bringing up generation because we're kind of starting life at a disadvantage than other races because our history is what it is. So we have got to protect our mental health a lot better than we have, and we have the tools and the resources to do it now.
Trauma is one thing you said about generational and generation. When we think about trauma, it's kind of like spiritual in a way that it carries from generation to generation. And how can trauma from this abuse affect a teen's life? And you can put your hands up.
Can I share?
Yes.
What did you say? Can I share?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like some of the trauma that I experienced at first, I was a people pleaser. Like I didn't, my self-esteem wasn't great. People told me I was beautiful and all of those things, but I didn't really believe it. So early on, I was a people pleaser. And then anxiety and things such as that, as she mentioned earlier. So that's some ways that it trauma affects our mental health.
I was mean, very mean. And as far as men, because my stepdad was verbally abusive, as far as men were, I made sure every chance I got, I tore one down if I had an opportunity, if they came at me sideways, right? But what I had to understand was it's not a reflection of all men, and all women don't have to. And now we hear a lot about masculine and feminine energy. It does create this narrative that feminine energy is weak, and but really the strength is being able to rest in your feminine energy, because in love you have to feel safe. So I heard a gentleman say a few weeks ago, instead of looking at it as it makes you angry, look at it and let it make you responsible. So we can teach our kids how to be responsible for their mental health and responsible for their safety without the aggression. But I had only seen the aggression. Look, so I was very aggressive, and it helped me in my career, but it like destroyed a lot of aspects of my personal life, you know. So I think that would be a way to try to find that balance, is to teach being in your feminine energy is your rightful place, nurturing, caring, loving. There's nothing wrong with that, but you have to feel safe. And the trigger is, for me, when I have to come out of that energy, I know immediately I'm in an unsafe space. Look.
Right. One of the things I would say also, sorry, you have something? Go ahead. Did you have
I was
something?
gonna say, overcompensating can show up in trauma a lot of times, especially as a teenager. You can either be an overachiever in your school life, or again, like she said, almost in a way of being a pushover. You're overcompensating for others and yourself. You're trying to overprotect yourself, and sometimes it doesn't allow you to trust anybody. And sometimes your own energy can spew out, and now people are trying to figure out, okay, why is she so angry when it should be, they're crying out for help. So I think that's how trauma can show up in a lot of ways too.
Can you have something?
And Miss Margie, I did want to say this real quickly. As you know, my oldest child, she has her MSW, and she says to me now all the time, she say, "Mama, I want you to be in your soft girl era right now." So at 50 years, I'm still recuperating from all this damage or all these years of survival, and still feeling like I'm in survival mode. I'm not surviving anymore, So all those things from childhood, they carry on. It's baggage. And don't get me wrong, I've been doing the work for years. I've been doing the work because it's definitely work. When you have a childhood that you have to heal from, it is work. But just that my daughter says that to me at 50 years old, "Mama, you in your soft girl era. I want you to be in your soft girl era. I want you to be selfish,
And feel safe. The next thing is, you got to remember, healing is not a one-time thing. And so that's the next thing we have to learn to teach each other. I tell people it's a minute by minute, second by second, hour by hour. I be thinking I done came out of my hard girl era, and then something happened, and then I done flipped back. It's like the switch. And then I'm like, wait, I thought I had gotten delivered from that, Jesus. And so going back to that relationship, with God, it's ongoing. Like, my healing is real time now. So I don't wait for it to build up, is the difference. I'm healing in the process of hurting. So I don't let the hurt me to where I can't heal it anymore. And I'm constantly telling that little girl in me, we all right, we safe, I got you. We're letting that go, but it is a constant. It's not a one time, or just because you're with your therapist, or just because you're with your good Judy's. It's in the moment. You've got to learn how to stop, drop, and pray for yourself, and those that are about to make you find that they're gonna mess around and find out. You got to pray for them too.
The life is a book, or you can think about your life as a car. Our tires will mess up. As soon as we get that, we think we're done, and then next thing, it's time for oil change. You get the oil change, and then next thing you know, the engine light come on. You get the engine fit. So it's always constantly something that we will pop up that we have to fix, that we don't know is there. And that's the thing, when you talk about sometimes you don't know those things are still there. Sometimes we walk around, we think we healed, and something to pop off, and next thing you know, those feelings will come up, and we find out we are not as healed as we think. It's almost like having a book. You got this one chapter, and then you know how you had the little questions at the end of the chapter, and you may not know all that, so now you got to go back and read the chapter again to answer those questions. And now you got that done. Now it's time for the next chapter, and it's always something that you're carving down or chipping down, and you're always finding something, almost like an archaeologist. And I'm a science teacher, so you just digging and digging and digging, and then you find something, and you pop up, and you keep digging, and now you have this plate you found, and it's all ancient, but at the same time, it's still there. And so we have to make sure that we are ongoing, healing ourselves, making sure, and I'm even talking to myself, making sure that we are getting a therapist, even in 50, 60 or what so have you. Me, I'm trying to stay at my 28 year, even though I'm, at another 20, but I'm trying to stay as young as I can. But at the same time, it's some things in me that I probably don't even know is there. And it, like you said, it'll pop up. And just recently, someone said something to me, a little girl said something to me, and I'm not gonna lie, I went to a place with this young lady, and I had to come back. And I knew that I still got some work to do. I still got some work to do. And this come from being young or what so have you, dealing with things that I dealt with. And even I think about doing that, we go through so much that carries on in our adulthood. And then just be like she said, Teisha said, it'd be that one little thing we see and we like, oh, red flag. I'm not gonna let this happen again. So now what I'm gonna tell you is, and now sometimes we can become abusive and we find, have a lot of women lost some really good men because of what the hurt that they've been through, men same way as well. So we just have to make sure that we are getting that constant help. Nikelle?
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that I love that you guys brought that up because a lot of people can take comfort in the fact that it is work, right? A lot of times we will feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not getting anywhere, but you can take comfort in, hey, like it's a process, it's something that you have to go through, and you will be okay. Like you said, there's times where I feel like, okay, I've been delivered from this angry spirit, and then somebody do something, I just get ticked off. I know I'm in a
Peter
season
come
of
out.
that right now. I'm just like, okay, people are ticking me off, and it's just like I thought I got past this, but you find comfort in doing the work, and you just do the work, and things will get better.
And can I say,
I've been there, and I mean, I got angry with this person, and I know I was dealing with some other stuff, grief and everything, and it just was not the time at that time to bother me. And that Peter came out, I was ready to slice the ear off and all that good stuff. That's why I say I'm a Peter, ready to slice that ear off. And I literally came home that day because normally I talk to my dad, but of course my dad is no longer here, and I normally talk to my daddy. I'm a daddy's girl, and I just literally had to go into the bathroom and let it all out and say, I let that get the best of me. I didn't know that was there. I don't have anyone at that time to really express because I always go and talk to my daddy about it. And I literally had to be like, I can't believe I let that get to me. And so yeah. So we had to make sure. Beal, you have something?
yeah, I was just gonna say, while we're talking about mental health, I don't know who all is listening, but it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. We're taught that we have to be super people. I walked around for years thinking I had to be superwoman, the weight of the world on my shoulder, and not dealing with things as they came up. I went through a state where I was diagnosed with acute stress disorder, and it was from years of dealing with everything and not dealing with it really. And in that time, in my weakest moment, there were people who were judging me. There were people who self-medicated. They're alcoholics there, but you're judging me for getting help that I need to be okay. So don't worry about what people say about you. Do the work. If that means therapy, if that means journaling, whatever it means for you to be okay. You don't have to pretend to be okay. There are so many people pretending to be okay. Don't pretend. Really get help. Young people, get help. You don't have to be messed up mentally. You can do the work and you can heal and be whole. And start it as in your young age. Don't wait till you're an adult and experience so much and not have the skills to deal with it. Get those skills early on. If you're a teenager, you know how to Google this and you know how to do all these other things. You can Google support groups. You can Google the tools that you need to be okay. So what I'm saying to everybody, even adults, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to seek help. Nobody can judge you for getting therapy or whatever you need to be okay. In my book, you are your own hero if you seek therapy. You're your own hero if you save yourself. You don't have to be bitter and angry and broken at 50 and 60. You can put the work in early on and have the tools in your toolbox to deal with whatever happens. Because like she said, we're all just one incident away from a mental health breakdown if we don't really have the tools.
Yep.
It can be a death, it can be an accident, it could be anything. So nobody has room to judge anybody because we're really all one incident away from having a mental health breakdown if you really want to know the truth. Now, if we, tools, the right tools and faith in God can get you through things. So that's what I would say. Make sure that you're seeking out the correct tools to be mentally okay. Make sure that you have a spiritual life, that you're getting to know God for yourself, not for your mama, not for your daddy, but for yourself. And if you don't understand God's word, get a children's Bible. I truly believe God is real. And I know that's not what the topic is, but I do know that my faith in him has gotten me through so much. So I just wanted to say, quickly, do the work. You don't have to be broken. You don't have to have all this trauma build up that you're not able to deal with. Get the tools in your toolbox early on.
And don't give and I will say this also, don't give the kids just the tools. We have to teach them how to use it.
Use them.
Okay. But a lot of times we give them tools and they like, what do I do with this? And that's it. We tell them, tell somebody. Okay, who do I tell? How do I tell it? What do I say? What are some things that I can do? I'm not one who know how to express. So what are some exactly what are some things that how can I express myself? One of the things I teach my students, if you feel like you can't talk to your parents, then write it in a letter and give it to them and let them read it. Because I know sometimes, with students, they feel like, or kids, they feel like they talk to the parents, they get emotional, and the parents will be like, well, you being disrespectful. So I tell you what, write it in a letter and give it to them and let them read it. And hopefully that would be a good way. So we got to give them tools. Do you think that reality TV cause a mental it affects our mental health of our teens, which now in turns can also lead to teen dating violence? Courtney, what you think?
Absolutely. I think it play a role with our youth, and even as an adult. I mean, sometimes I watch reality TV and it put me in a mood. It just get me anxious, get me riled up, don't let my husband walk past. I'd be about ready to strangle him and he hadn't done anything. So it's almost, it triggers something. It gets your emotion and your adrenaline just flowing. Just as, as we talked about mental health, I know, like for me, I've tapped into nature. That has helped me so much. And when you guys were just talking about kind of like not worrying what other people have to say. I know for me, my family was like, girl, what in the world? Why are you always outdoors? Why are you kayaking? Why are you going to mountains and, doing things like that? And I'm like, I've discovered nature, and that makes me something about nature, gives me energy. And I'm just thinking about all the things that you guys were saying. This has been a great platform. We started off talking about, trying to focus on the youth with domestic violence, but just us communicating with each other, we see that we've been dealing with so much, and just us communicating, it's like we uplift each other, and not only that, through the conversations, we talked about God and how we need to put God first. So this has been definitely great insight with just the collaboration and sharing what we all experience. But yes, I think everything that we experience on a day-to-day basis triggers how we react to certain things. So that's why I think it's very important for us to try to find peace and try to find something positive, because again, watching the reality TV shows, a lot of children think that that's how relationships supposed to take place, or that's how the life you're supposed to have, the materialistic things like the nice expensive cars, nice homes. But I don't think children or our youth or even adults even realize those same individuals, whether they have money or not, they're still experience abuse from their spouse or even some of the friends that they have in that circle. So we just have to do a better job of changing the narrative and talking more positive and allowing our children to see great things. Like back in the day, people watched Bill Carver. I know he's in prison, but that was, for me growing up, that was a model that we followed. We had the father in the home, the mother, the children going off to college. It was just that family dynamic. And that was like a model for us growing up. But now you have the different reality shows. And from what I've seen from watching them, I haven't seen or haven't saw many positive role models for our young though.
Right. Teisha, do you have something?
I do, because the biggest thing that's got us all looped up and tied into social media and reality TV is dopamine. it gives you that little shot of dopamine in your brain and you feel a little better. So I think, like you said, it's about teaching, because there's a support group for everything on Facebook. I mean, you can go get a support group for your big toe hurting. I mean, it's just that support groups, right? So
right now.
right. So I think when you start looking at it, I stopped myself from watching that type of stuff years ago, because the soap operas used to even have me in a bad headspace. Think I'm paranoid, think everybody talking about you, somebody about to backstab you, somebody about to try to choke you and kidnap you. It just is too much. But I wanted to bring to our attention to something that's overlooked in the mental health community. Is called high functioning anxiety. And a lot of people overlook this mental part of it. And I see the teens, y'all, the pressure that's on them to achieve. And then if you get that coupled with abuse, that you'll start seeing it and miss it, because you'll see this person constantly doing well in sports, doing well with their academics. That can be a sign as well that something else is going on. And I think that is one of the ones that's overlooked, which is the high functioning anxiety. I have it. I have to be very careful, because I can get very locked into fixing stuff, data, just almost to the point where it's like, I got to get this, figured out why this, because I tell people all the time, numbers don't lie, people do. So I'm one of those people that will find a glitch or a flaw in something. And then so those are also some of the signs too. Compulsive cleaning, the OCDness, those are signs too that you've got to look at as well. So I think we a lot of times overlook what we tolerate, and we don't look at the acceptance of even teenagers and stuff, who they are, because a lot of these children already have their personality in place. So if you start paying attention, you can kind of steer them towards a positive outcome, even if there is abuse there already. But you've got to start early having that conversation with, if this happens, because you guys, most of our lessons have been in our pain. So, I mean, life without pain, you can't always get to the pleasure. Not saying that you have to have pain, but what do you do with that pain? And the last thing that I would like to talk about or bring to our attention too is rejection anxiety. A lot of people don't say things because they're afraid of being rejected. Okay. So those are real things to look into, so that we can, like you said, Miss Margie, speak about it in real terms where they can apply it. These children are almost genius level smart because of the things that they have access to. They may not be curriculum smart, but we can take just about any third, fourth, or fifth grader and put them on the street and they would survive. Look, they may not read or comprehend, but they would survive. Look, I'm just saying.
Well, while you saying that, what came to mind for me is not only teen dating violence, but abuse is happening in the school system. Okay. So you're in kindergarten and you're taking like 5 different tests, and your teacher is pushing you to pass these tests because they are pushing them to get scores. And these kids are building anxiety at a young age. In kindergarten, you're testing them to death. And so the abuse starts there as well. And it's building up and building up. And I've seen last year a student who did not do well on, I think it was like one of the tests we have, like a benchmark test or what so have you. She got anxiety and wanted to take her life. 5th grade, these tests are not going to fail you or what so have you. Take it. It's not really nothing but data for the teacher. That's it. Data for the school. School did good. Yay, you did good. And that's it. But this little girl had this type of anxiety. I mean, smart little girl. And so for me, what I started doing years ago was, instead of telling my kids, I want you to make a 4 or 5, I changed the narrative and told them, if you can give me so many numbers out of this number, you will pass. That's what I told them. And I said, just count how many you want, how many I said that you know is right, and you will pass. And when I tell you, with them hearing it that way versus saying, I need to give me a 4 or 5, because they already be like, I ain't gonna be able to do it. Give me a 4. Give me so many numbers out of this right, and I think you'll pass the test. That's all they need to hear is pass. Half of my kids, if not 85 of my kids, made 4s and 5s, because all they did was count, and it was just easier for them. But we start these kids off early with anxiety on, you got to pass this test, you got to pass this test, they got this test, they got this test. And I mean, the teacher can barely test their own kids. Then you get the test inside the classroom. And so we are building that anxiety in mental health. And I know this is going kind of left, but I really would love to have that discussion as a former teacher in the classroom sector. I really would love to have that type of talk. And I'm working on my doctorate, and that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about is the trauma that's happening in the classroom and what so have you. And it's not effective. What we're doing is not effective. We're just building a lot of kids with anxiety. And like you said, I have to make this, I have to do this, I have to get this A, I have to get this B, I have to get, and that's all they worry about is the grade. They don't worry about learning. They just worry about the grade, because that's what we push. So we really are abusing our children in the classroom and in the education system as we speak. So I'm gonna move real quick. Can we teach trauma informed? What are some trauma informed approaches? Because we're coming up to 2 minutes, because I'm at 8:30, so I want to get through this real quick. What are some? Let me skip down a little bit. How can we break the stigma on teen dating violence? And I think this is where I've got 2 more questions, and it's almost time. How can we break the stigma on teen dating violence and mental health? Or how can we break the silence?
I'll say by making sure that we're actually listening to the youth, making sure that they do have a safe space, because like you just mentioned with the testing, outside of reality TV, social media is their new reality TV, more than reality TV, because they're looking at all these successful things and all this happiness, and they just think that's how life is supposed to be, without realizing like a lot of this stuff comes with a process. Sometimes you're gonna fail. Everything is not going to be perfect. And I think that literally, to give me a second, okay? I think that outside of, that, making sure that we're really listening to them, not just like pouring down these resources, like, you can talk to this person, you can talk to this person, but that also comes with a process too of being able to trust. They have to learn to trust one person or 1 or 2 people. And where are they going to get that from if they're again getting all this testing done? By the time kids are in 1st grade, they have like 45 different teachers, and that's a lot of people to learn. You just get into the school system, you just learned that you have a mom and dad and siblings and a cat and a dog and all this stuff, and then you go into school and now you have all this stuff that you have to learn every day. Then you have to learn how to have a social life and all that stuff. And I think that, again, going back to learning coping skills, learning how to cope with anxiety is a big thing. And I'm just at my big age learning and admitting like, hey, I heal, I'm healing. However, I don't always cope with things the best way. I was never taught that. And who do I get that influence from? I have to learn how to lead myself. And I think that, really having, like you said, more mentoring groups, more seeing better leadership, honest leadership, and letting them know that, hey, everything is not peaches and cream, that, I had to go through this stuff to get here, and you will too. You don't have to go through bad, but there is a process.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say quickly, just more trailblazers like you, Miss Margie, people who are willing to stand up and create platforms such as this.
Thank you. Courtney?
I would say, just like she mentioned, creating this platform, using open-ended questions and not putting that much pressure on individuals, listening versus being judgmental to those that's experiencing mental health or just experiencing any type of trauma or abuse. Just being a listening ear and helping rebuild their self-esteem, I think would be a great form of or tool to help.
Thank you. So, because we at 8:31, so I want to get you off. What message would you like to share with a teen who feels alone and ashamed or afraid to speak up? And we want a message from everyone. I'm gonna go start with Teisha. What message would you share with a teen, and possibly can share with a parent as well?
Never be afraid to ask for help. And there's always a test in your testimony. So being able, and I always tell people, honesty is freedom and honesty. So when the saying the truth shall set you free, I'm always encouraging adults, children, whomever, own your truth, because the only way you can get out of any mental health situation is it's just like being a drug addict or alcoholic. You have to first admit that you're struggling with something or having this to happen to you, and then you can start the process of healing and getting help. And it doesn't look the same for everybody, and so just because it doesn't seem like a big deal doesn't mean that it's not a big deal. If it's affecting any aspects of your life, it's a big deal. And so you want to surround yourself and know yourself. Get to know yourself. There is safety in you spending quality time with you. I heard Miss E say, her daughter said, get selfish. We were taught not to be selfish. We have to be selfish. And I'm constantly talking with my friend circle about creating healthy boundaries. What does that look like for you? Define safety for you. Safety for me may not be the same as everybody else on here, but it doesn't matter that it doesn't look like your safety. It's what I need. So don't be bounded, create those boundaries at a young age and make sure you understand why they're there for protection, and be very careful about who you share your trauma with. Be very mindful of that, because sometimes people take your trauma and use it against you. And so you have to be very mindful, or they become the abuser as well of you. So with you having those boundaries and understanding what the red flags are and stuff, you can prevent a lot of things. Be a green flag, because a green flag, the red flags are going to stay away from you. I'm telling you, I was too truthful as a kid for somebody to want to fool with me, because I'm tell everything. Look, I'm gonna tell on you, me, everything. So I always tell people it is power in your truth.
Thank you, Courtney. What would you say to a teen who's feeling afraid, alone? What message would you give?
I think I would tell that teen, you are not alone. You are not the one to blame. Speaking up doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. And I would tell that person, you deserve to be safe. You deserve respect, and love shouldn't hurt.
Right. Beal, thank you.
I would just say, you matter and you're worthy. I always remember that.
Thank you. All right. Sakia?
I would definitely tell a teenager that you're never alone, especially in this phase of the world. There's communities everywhere. Also, that school is not just for learning and tests. There are lots of tools in school, so make sure you're using them. A lot of us didn't grow up with that knowledge that we could go to these people and ask for help, or just express ourselves, or just have another adult that we could trust. And like I made my comment, broken crayon still color. If you've been through something, it's okay. You can move on from it, and you'll be great from it. And never look down on yourself. Always love yourself.
Thank you, Nikelle.
I would say don't ever feel ashamed, and also telling parents, don't shame your children, especially if they're coming to talk to you. One of the things that I wish someone would have told me when I was younger, was to take time, like Teisha said, to get to know myself, to get to know what I like, what is important to me. Because a lot of times when we start to date young, or we're so focused on being in a relationship, we start to focus on other people. Now, mind you, when you get into marriage and all that other stuff, there is a different mindset that should come along in sacrifice. But in dating, I think it's really important. One of the things that I wish someone would have told to me when I was younger was to take my time in dating. Not saying you can't like anyone, not saying you can't have a friendship, but really taking your time and getting to know what's important to you. Once you get to that level, it's just life changing. It's just like, hey, I know what I want. I know my standards. I know my boundaries, but just take your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I want to say also the tools that you are given, find someone that you can trust enough to help you learn how to use those tools. It has to be someone you can trust. I would say also just pray that the Lord send you the right person. That's what I've always prayed, that the Lord send me the right person in my life. And he has done that. A lot of times the right person is not your family members, not your friends, it's not anyone that you know. Sometimes it's a stranger, but you ask for him to give you discernment and make sure that it's the right person that's supposed to be in your life. If you feel like you can't find anyone from school, find an organization or a mentoring program that you feel like you can be a part of. I think that's missing in our community. I just feel like there's not enough mentoring programs that's kind of affecting our kids. We have many, but are they actually, affecting our children and actually impacting their lives and things like that? So that's one of the things. And I would say also, yes, and we all are here. Thank you, Nikelle. And also, I would love to make sure that our community organizations can come together. I think our community organizations need training on that. One of the things I did was I got a training, and it's a free training out there where you get first aid mental health for our youth. And I think everyone should take that to know how to handle our children. So I want to say thank you all for coming on. This was powerful to me. It was very impactful. It was a lot of discussion that was on the live as well. I thank those who came on the live. Before we go, real quick, I want to make sure that I just give this one announcement. One of the things that Miss Beal came up and she said about the bag. I have done a program called Bag Lady at my women's conference. So I want to kind of bring that up. One of the things I do is I do a holistic women's conference and I don't call it a women empowerment because we say that all the time. Ladies will get empowerment at a event. And then the next thing you know, they come back and they're dealing with the same thing. And now they waiting another year to get empowered again. And so what I do is present this real quick. This is the Diva Self-Care and Holistic Wellness Retreat. This year is called Waiting to Exhale because I feel like we all are holding on to some things and it's time to exhale. I have done one called Bag Lady as well, where we do a restorative circle and we do a Bag Lady one. And this is one where we have some powerful speakers coming in. It's teacher Richardson, Sora Sheila, she's coming. Nicole Smith will be my speaker as well as I'll be doing a small piece on that. As you can see, we have a lot of things in store that weekend. It's going to be in Myrtle Beach at Oceanfront. So I'm excited about that. If you are looking to let go of some things, this is a powerful retreat. I'm not saying that because I'm putting it together. I have seen where women lives have changed. They are doing so much better. They got a lot of things out and we built a sisterhood. And not only do we just leave from this, people now they're now talking to each other. You met somebody there and now they become your sister. Miss Beal was there. She did a fashion show there as well. So if you're interested, please contact me for that. So before we leave, I just want to make sure that as we wrap this up, I want to make sure that you know that you are not alone. You are not to blame. There is also help. There is hope. And also you want to make sure that you contact the National Teen Dating Abuse Hotline. Loveisrespect.org. You can also text Love Is to 225-222. You have the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233. We also have a crisis line. You can text home to 741741 and also find you a therapist. There's plenty out here. So I want to say thank you, ladies, for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experience. I hope we share some things that our teens can learn from. And I'm looking forward to having another conversation on this. Did anybody else? I will ask if you can give us contact of how we can find you. If you can, Teisha, how can we find you?
I am on Instagram, Facebook as ITEETEE Cradle, CRADLE. So please feel free to reach out to me. I am available anytime. I go to bed early, but I'll see your message. You'll get a response about 5 o'clock in the morning, but I'm always available.
Beal, how can we contact you?
Did you say me? Okay. Special education the right way at gmail.com or Earlene Williams Beal on Facebook. Also, I have a website, stylesbymrse.com. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, Ms. Margie.
Thank you for coming.
And I enjoyed you ladies.
Appreciate you. Now, how can we contact you?
You can contact me by my email, nikellemon@kw.com, or you can contact me by phone. I'm a realtor, so everybody has my phone number, 910-703-9612. I'm also on Facebook, Nikelle Inman, other social media platforms, but if you reach out to me by email or phone, I will respond.
Thank you. All right, Takia, how can we contact you?
You can contact me pretty much on any platform, either at Takia Mathis, TAKIEYAH, Mathis, MATHIS. My other content is under the Itchy Goddess. And for my organization, for resources and for outlet purposes, the Standing Light Foundation on all platforms as well.
All right, thank you. Courtney?
I'm on social media, Courtney Banks McLaughlin, Facebook, I think Instagram, any social media platform. Phone number 910-973-2413. Email Courtney Banks McLaughlin at fayettevillenc.gov.
You. And from me at Margie McLean Foundation, put the #1 on Facebook and also Instagram. You can find me also for my life coaching, chemistry, growth mindset, one as well on social media. And please, that's spelled KEMISTRY, chemistry, like the singer Kim. That's where I got it from, because it's one of my favorite singers. So find me there if you are interested in life coaching. If you're interested in actually having a group on self-love, which I have a shirt called self-love is my love language now. I had to build that, teach you how to love yourself again. Please contact me. And if you're interested also in joining the women's conference, contact me at chemistrygrowthmindset@gmail.com. Ladies, I thank you. I enjoyed this. I hope to have you back again. If you are having a platform you'd like for us to come and speak, please get any of these ladies in contact with them. Please connect with each other as well. I appreciate you, and y'all have a great night.
You all are amazing.
Yes, thank you.
Ladies, have a good night.